The idyllic town of Quincy, Illinois. Rebecca Bernadette Postel Bliefnick was born on November 19, 1981. She was attending Payson Seymour Elementary School, followed by Quincy Notre Dame High School, where she was named valedictorian, the first of many academic and professional honors in her lifetime. She graduated cum laude from Quincy University with a bachelor's degree in biological science with a minor in chemistry, and worked for Sanofi Aventis as one of their top-performing pharmaceutical sales representatives. But Becky always envisioned herself working hands-on in the medical profession, so it was no surprise when she left pharmaceuticals for a career in nursing, her true calling, where she was able to provide care and comfort to people on a daily basis. Becky graduated summa cum laude from Blessing Riemann College of Nursing and Health Sciences, as well as receiving the Faculty Outstanding Senior Award. Even more remarkably, she gave birth to her third child during spring break of her senior year, only missing one day of school. Becky worked for Quincy Medical Group in gastrointestinal surgery before transitioning to Blessing Hospital's emergency room. During the COVID pandemic, she additionally worked as a travel nurse at both Northeast Regional Medical Center in Kirksville, Missouri, and Hannibal Regional Hospital in Hannibal, Missouri. In 2020, Becky was nominated for the International Daisy Award, which honors exceptional care given by extraordinary nurses. At the time of her death, she worked at Blessing Hospital in vascular access and was working toward her nurse practitioner certification. In addition to her career, Becky always made time for service. According to members of the St. Peter's Grade School Association, where Becky volunteered for the last 5 years, Becky was a tremendous asset and always willing to help or pitch in, whether it was coordinating the mother-son event, planning the teacher conference luncheons, or coordinating the school's room mothers. Her love of animals led her to volunteering at Homeward Bound Wagon, a nonprofit all-volunteer animal rescue group. Becky was also slated to begin volunteering in the spring at Quest Stables, which focuses on providing therapeutic riding services. As dedicated as she was to her professional pursuits, her most profound devotion was to her family. She was married to Timothy Tim Bliefnick. Becky and Tim married in 2009. They met when they were studying at university, but started dating a couple years after graduation. The two eventually moved in together, married, and started a family. Becky quit her job in pharmaceutical sales to become a stay-at-home mom, while Tim continued his successful career in the recycling industry. They were adored by outsiders who believed they had a perfect marriage and family. But Becky and Tim's wedding was crumbling down, with Tim being the abuser. She was very happy with their marriage for probably the first 5 years. And then, things started to change. He got progressively more manipulative and controlling. He didn't do any of the work ever at the house. In 2020, Tim was a contestant on the TV show Family Feud. The show host asked him about his biggest mistake on his wedding day. Tim answered that the biggest mistake was agreeing to marry his wife. Their relationship only became more strained when Becky decided to go back to school to become a nurse. Tim not only did not support her, he did not increase his time with the boys. In January 2021, after 11 years of marriage, Tim filed for divorce. Although he wouldn't discuss the specifics of why he filed, he hinted that it had to do with what he saw as a change in Becky's personality after she became a nurse. Tim said, "She struggled with patience and stress a lot, especially when it came to the kids, and it created some conflict." A custody battle followed. Becky feared that Tim would kidnap the children. She also felt that she needed to protect herself from Tim. Becky believed that Tim had mental health problems. Becky also felt that she wasn't safe around Tim's father. Tim's father was just as abusive as his son. He screamed in Becky's face. He shoved Becky and threw furniture at her in front of his grandchildren. So Becky filed for a protection order against Tim's father. Becky's friends noticed that she looked mentally and emotionally exhausted. Becky filed for an order of protection against Tim. In her petition, she alleged that Tim entered her residence without permission. She also said that he repeatedly falsified interactions between the two. That order of protection was not granted, but a judge did ultimately order Tim and Becky stay away from each other's residences, except when exchanging their kids. And the judge also ordered Tim to return a 9mm handgun that Becky had gifted him when they were together. She couldn't wait to get the divorce finalized. Tim had also threatened to kill Becky after she had found out that Tim was hiding money. Becky began receiving notifications of a cyclist riding past her residence around midnight from her surveillance system in February 2023. Becky's next-door neighbor also received similar notifications. Becky was just 41 years old when, on the afternoon of February 23, 2023, Becky's three sons, ages 12, 10, and 5, were not at home at the time of the murder. They were staying with their father, Tim Bliefnick, about a mile away. The couple was in the process of getting divorced. Tim says that when he couldn't reach Becky on the 23rd, he contacted her father. He said, "Hey, I haven't been able to get a hold of her either. I'm gonna go over to the house." Becky's father tried to call his daughter, but she didn't respond. He noticed that the front door was open. He rushed inside and found Becky in the bathroom, covered in blood. He checked her pulse but couldn't find any. Becky was dead. The authorities found bullet casings around Becky and under her body. This meant that some of the bullets were fired while Becky lay on the ground. Becky had been shot a total of 14 times. Surveillance footage showed that the mysterious cyclist, spotted in the area many times, was caught on camera again in the wee hours of February 23, 2023. The cyclist stopped near Becky's house. He took out a crowbar and used it to break into the house. Becky attempted to call 911 when the break-in happened, but the call failed. The police soon found an abandoned blue bicycle near the Quincy Public Schools bus garage. Police quickly determined that the killer had broken into Becky's home by prying open an upstairs window in one of the children's bedrooms. Video shows a police officer later reenacting how investigators believe the assailant scaled the house. The person had climbed up on there. There was a patio chair that was pulled over. He walked past Becky's windows in her bedroom, and then they went to a room of one of the boys, and they pried open, broke the window open, and went in. You could almost trace killer path to Becky's room. He had kicked in or broken in the door violently. Becky then ran into the bathroom, turned around, and got shot. So it would have been around 1:11 in the morning, because we know that at 1:11 and 10 seconds, Becky tried to call 911 on her cell phone. She dialed 91126, and the phone was knocked out of her hand, and it was found behind the door. Nothing appeared to be stolen, and neighbors didn't see or hear anything, but there was evidence left behind. A partial shoe print near the point of entry, 8 spent 9mm shell casings, and small pieces of plastic on the floor around Becky's body. Police thought it was unusual when we saw that. It was like, okay, what is this? Detectives canvassing the neighborhood looking for surveillance video didn't have to go far. Becky's next-door neighbors, the Hymans, had installed a camera on the side of their house after a car break-in more than a year earlier. It pointed at their driveway, which ran alongside Becky's house. It records movement, so anytime it senses movement, it will notify us on our phones. The Hymans' camera didn't capture anything on the night of the murder, but it did capture something unusual about 24 hours earlier. We have slowed down some of the videos so you can see them better. At 1:05 a.m., a person was seen walking down the driveway towards the back of Becky's house. And what appeared to be that same person was seen again 48 minutes later, this time walking in the opposite direction. The camera had also captured a similar incident about a week earlier on February 14th, Valentine's Day. Taylor Hyman, "I saw that one in the middle of the night," and texted Becky immediately. I told her, "We just saw somebody in the driveway," and she responded not till the next morning. Taylor Hyman, "That's when she told me that she hadn't seen anything, but she thought she had been hearing voices in her backyard and her motion light go on, and she was very paranoid. At the time, the Hymans thought it was a neighborhood prowler looking for something to steal. But now, with Becky dead, they began to wonder, and investigators did too. Officers went around the entire neighborhood trying to find more video. And we were able to find a video from a house, and we were able to find video from the Quincy bus barn. And those videos showed a person riding a bike in the direction of Becky's house. After analyzing the recorded times of the videos, authorities began to suspect that the person seen on the bike was the same person seen in the driveway. Every time you see a person at the Hyman residence, you see a person riding a bike down the road, just a few minutes before you see a person on that Hyman video. And even though there was no video from the Hyman residence on the morning Becky was killed, there was video of a person on a bike riding in the direction of Becky's house, right before the murder, and in the opposite direction right after. And this is not a part of town that people ride bikes in the middle of the night in winter. And so, when you have this surveillance video, and it exactly matches the timeline, that's suspicious. But there was one big problem. You can tell absolutely nothing from the videos, only that the bike did not appear to have reflectors on the wheels. Authorities needed more leads, and they would get one from Becky's sister that would point them in a very specific direction. When Becky's sister Sarah and brother-in-law Brett learned of her murder, they say one person came to mind as the prime suspect: Becky's estranged husband, Tim Bliefnick. Becky was killed 1 week before the divorce case was set to go to trial. When Sarah Riley informed law enforcement of their history, Tim became a person of interest. Authorities kept digging, and days later, they found a bike, with no reflectors on the wheels, just like the ones seen on those surveillance videos. The bike was found less than half a block from Tim's house. Then police executed a search warrant on Tim's house and car as Tim looked on. And on March 13, 2023, just over 2 weeks after Becky's death, Tim Bliefnick was arrested and charged with her murder. Tim's divorce attorney Casey Schnack would become his defense attorney, and she says she's convinced police got it wrong. When Tim Bliefnick was arrested, it made national news in large part because of an appearance he made alongside his parents and brothers on the game show Family Feud. TV Harvey. Vertical Bar. Family Feud host. All right, Tim, we talked to 100 married people. What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding? Tim Bliefnick. Honey, I love you, but said I do. The episode was filmed in 2019, nearly 2 years before Tim filed for divorce, but because of the charges he now faced, it had people talking. And there was also chatter about Tim's appearance in his mugshot, although it was no surprise to Becky's family. Tim's attorney, Casey Schnack, was determined to prove his innocence. She says just because Tim and Becky were going through a messy divorce, it doesn't mean he killed her. But Adams County prosecutors Josh Jones and Laura Keck say, even though there may not have been physical abuse, there was emotional abuse, evident in Tim's text to Becky. Tim said, no, she wasn't the one that was emotionally abused. I tried to create space. I tried to stay out of her life. And Tim says he has an alibi for the time of the murder. He says he was home with their 3 kids. They were sleeping over that night because Becky had asked him to keep them an extra night. She told him that she wasn't feeling well, and he said, that's fine. That's how you want to see 2 people in a divorcing situation act with kids. She showed weakness to a predator. And that's what predators do when they see a weakness, they attack. And they also say that explains the intruder's point of entry, an upstairs window in one of the kids' bedrooms. If you're a random intruder, why do you go to the second-floor window? You go past not just 1 window, but 3 windows that are possible entrance points. And you just happen to get lucky that it's a little boy's room that's not there that night. But Bliefnick says is a lack of physical evidence tying Tim to the crime. No murder weapon or bloody clothing was found, and while police did seize pairs of Tim's shoes, they weren't able to match them to that partial shoe print found at the scene. Police took every single pair of athletic shoes that they thought would be a match. They didn't find any that were a suitable match. Also points out that Tim's DNA wasn't found on that patio chair that investigators believe was used by the killer to climb onto Becky's roof. Nothing on that was connected to Tim. They took every pair of gloves from Tim's car, house, and that they could find, and none of those gloves had anything that linked him to this crime. But if Tim didn't kill Becky, who did? Tim's attorney says that she believes investigators should have given more weight to the idea that it could have been a random prowler who killed Becky in a break-in gone wrong. Remember, police found those videos of a person on a bike and a person walking down Becky's neighbor's driveway. Tim insists it's not him in those videos. You cannot say with any degree of certainty who that person is on any of those videos. All you see is a bike without reflectors. And even though a bike with no reflectors on the wheels was found less than half a block from Tim's house, attorney says that doesn't mean anything. His DNA was not found on that bike. And we don't even know that the bike that was found is the same bike that was in the video. But prosecutors Jones and Keck say they did find evidence tying Tim to that bike. We were able to download information off his phone, and we found that Mr. Bliefnick had a, what I'll call burner or fake Facebook account, for the name John Smith. And they say that John Smith's Facebook account appeared to have been looking at this bike for sale, a blue Schwinn with no reflectors on the wheels, just like that bike that was found. Tim's attorney said, I have a fake Facebook account. I'm not proud of it, but people do it. Sure. Are there similarities? Sure, but that's not the only abandoned bike that's been found around town. The detectives followed the evidence exactly where it took them, and there was one inescapable conclusion, that it was Mr. Bliefnick. But despite their confidence, they soon faced quite a challenge. When Tim was arrested, he was ordered held without bond. He had a right to a speedy trial, which he took, meaning prosecutors would be required to try the case within 90 days of Tim's arrest. Police said, "We were going to be ready come hell or high water," but did they have enough to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt? Juries expect a confession. They expect that DNA evidence that says 1 in 500 million. We're going to have to show them that's not what we have here. On May 23, 2023, exactly 3 months after Becky Bliefnick was gunned down in her home, Tim Bliefnick went on trial for her murder. Trial opening statements. The defendant looked down at Becky and he pointed a gun at her, and he pulled the trigger. Prosecutors Josh Jones and Laura Keck began by methodically laying out the evidence they say points directly to Tim, starting with those odd pieces of plastic that were found around Becky's body. They say investigators determined that they were shreds from an ALDI grocery store bag. And then in the defendant's house, we found stacks of ALDI bags. He had fired through an ALDI bag either in an attempt to muffle the sound or to catch his shell casings. And prosecutors say that in the process, DNA was left behind on a piece of that plastic. An expert testified that it was more likely than not that Tim was a contributor, and Tim also couldn't be excluded from DNA that was found under Becky's fingernails. That was 3 times more likely to have come from the defendant or a male relative from the lineage of the defendant. Prosecutors also told the jury that police found a crowbar in Tim's basement, and they called an expert to the stand who testified that she compared it to tool marks left on the window that was pried open at Becky's. While there were microscopic consistencies, she couldn't say with scientific certainty that that crowbar made those marks. The expert said that that was inconclusive. Inconclusive leaves a jury guessing and speculating, which they are not allowed to do. The jury heard about the couple's acrimonious divorce and from Becky's sister and several friends who testified about those fears Becky had raised about Tim. Several of them acknowledged that they regretfully didn't take steps to help her. And the prosecution argued that the timing of the murder is significant. Remember, Becky was killed 1 week before the couple's divorce case was set to go to trial. And prosecutors told the jury there was something even bigger than money and custody that was going to come into play. Becky didn't want their 3 children to be around the defendant's father unsupervised. Police uncovered court documents that reveal Becky had gathered witnesses who she said planned to testify about Tim's father, Ray Bliefnick, and would allege that he had a history of perversion and abusing minor children many years earlier. The alleged victims were not Becky and Tim's children. Becky sought an order of protection against Ray, but a judge denied her request. In a letter, Ray's lawyer wrote that Ray vehemently denies the claims, and that he has never been charged with any criminal offense stemming from the allegations. The prosecution pointed out that on the day of Becky's murder, hours before anyone except her killer knew that she was dead, Tim brought a kid's basketball hoop to his father's house. He's doing that because he knows Becky's not going to be a problem anymore. Becky didn't want those boys around Ray, and in Tim's mind, that problem was solved because Becky was dead. But the prosecution wasn't done. The jury was also shown numerous damaging searches found on Tim's phone, like how to open my door with a crowbar, how to make a homemade pistol silencer, and how to clean gunpowder off your hands. And remember that person caught on camera in Becky's neighbor's driveway on Valentine's Day about a week before the murder? Well, prosecutors say that right after that sighting, Tim made more than 200 searches online for a specific license plate and a car VIN number. It turns out that that license plate and VIN number belonged to a man whom Becky was dating, and his truck was parked in Becky's driveway at the time. And for somebody with power and control issues, you realize that your prior significant other is now in a relationship with somebody, that they're spending the night on Valentine's Day. And then the minute you get back to your home at 1:10 in the morning, you're searching their license plate number and their VIN number. That's somebody who's lost control. Tim insists he had learned about Becky's new relationship months earlier. Before they rested the case, prosecutors dropped one more piece of evidence: spent shell casings that were found in Tim's home. An expert testified that she compared them to the shell casings found at the crime scene and determined that 27 of them had been fired from the exact same gun used in the murder. Judge Robert Adrian had the option of sentencing Tim to anywhere between 45 years to life. Mr. Bliefnick, you researched this murder, you planned this murder. You broke into her house and you shot her. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 times, raised voice. The court believes that the appropriate sentence would be natural life in prison without the possibility of parole. Prosecutors Jones and Keck say the punishment fits the crime, but even they don't consider it justice. Now Becky's family is left to focus on all they have left of her, memories, and the loves of her life, her 3 boys who are now living with her parents. We will all work together to make sure those boys have the life they deserved. And we started a GoFundMe to support the boys. Becky would have wanted positive change to happen. She would want somebody else's life to be saved. If we can learn anything, if somebody reaches out to you and says that they're scared, that they believe that their partner, or whoever it is capable of violence, you need to believe them and make an active effort to make sure they're safe. Tim Bliefnick has not been allowed any contact with his kids since his arrest.